They say when you're about to retire, things start slowing down. Life gets quiet. Peaceful. Yeah, mine got louder. Like, soap opera on a loudspeaker loud. I'm Tom Becket. 28 years in the same classroom at Marston High, prestigious public education at its finest, or whatever tagline the district's PR team slaps on their tax levy flyers. I teach history. Or I did. As of this week, I'm retired. Technically. If you ask my now ex-wife Megan, I'm just an overripe tenure case who didn't know when to hang it up. She teaches drama. Ironically. And if you ask Assistant Principal Daniel Cross, the man she's been warming up backstage with, well, he'd probably call me buddy. He calls everyone that. It's what insecure men do when they need to sound like they belong. Anyway, the first sign that something was off? Megan kept suggesting I slow down more. Take naps, Tom. Maybe skip that department meeting, you've earned it. Let yourself relax. Relax? Megan's never told me to relax in 16 years of marriage. She once reminded me to mow the lawn the day after I got back from knee surgery. But now she's handing me lavender-scented candles and oat milk? Something was off. Still, I chalked it up to retirement nerves. Maybe she was getting emotional. You know, feeling the weight of the transition. Then came the day that cemented it. It was a Tuesday. I stayed late grading AP final essays in my room because our janitor, Manny, locks up at 6 and forgets I exist. I wandered down to the auditorium looking for the custodian's key ring, figured maybe it had been left in the tech booth again. What I found instead? The universe giving me an unfiltered mic check from hell. Daniel Cross's voice, amplified loud enough to echo off the catwalks. Check, 1 2. Testing. Megan, you bringing that dress again tonight or am I the only one coming? Then laughter. His. Her voice too muffled, but definitely Megan's, somewhere downstage. You're such a pig, Danny. Hey, I can't help it. I've been grading more than just papers lately. You make faculty evaluations worth showing up for. And then, of course, more laughter. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just stood there in the hallway like some poor idiot in a sitcom, holding a stack of essays while his life got steamrolled by an open mic and 2 horny coworkers who thought they were clever. I should have burst in, right? Stormed the stage, lit my marriage on fire with their own words, made it theatrical. Megan would have loved that, the drama teacher finally starring in her own scandal. But no. I'm not a screamer. I'm a planner. Instead, I walked back to my classroom, shut the door, and finished grading. I gave a kid named Josh a C- he didn't deserve because I couldn't stop shaking. But by the time I stapled those essays into neat little packets, my brain had already locked in on the one thing I knew how to do well, teach lessons. The final one? Would be for Megan. Now, you should understand, Marston High doesn't throw casual retirements. They go all out. Teachers get fancy catered parties in the auditorium, complete with speeches, slideshows, and a giant cake shaped like a book or a globe. Mine was scheduled for Friday. Megan was on the planning committee. Of course she was. She'd taken the reins, booked the vendors, even picked out my cake. Chocolate bourbon ganache, my favorite, which I now assume is also Daniel Cross's. I kept smiling through it all. Took the congratulations from staff. Nodded through the principal's fake compliments. Let Megan kiss me on the cheek in front of everyone. All the while, I was tucking things into place. See, the thing about working at a school for 28 years is, you know all the nooks. You know who controls the projector. You know where the AV kids keep the backup remotes. You know how to upload a file to the master slideshow folder the day before an event and make it look like it was always there. And if you're really lucky, like I was, you happen to be close with the senior IT lead, who owes you a favor after you covered for his side hustle flipping broken school-issued iPads. So I got what I needed. Audio. Video. Names. Dates. All wrapped into a little surprise presentation I titled A History Teacher's Legacy, Behind the Curtain. By the time Friday rolled around, Megan was glowing. Dressed like she was about to accept a Tony Award, flitting around the auditorium shaking hands with retirees' spouses like she'd run for Congress. Daniel stood off to the side, nursing a glass of punch and pretending to be humble. My name got called around 7:45. A few polite claps. Someone shouted, "Speech." I walked up to the podium. Looked out across the sea of staff, spouses, former students, school board members. I cleared my throat. Thank you, truly. I've spent nearly 3 decades in this school. I've watched kids grow up, fail, recover, thrive. I've seen curriculum change, superintendents rotate like clock hands, and I've sat through more fire drills than should be legally permitted in a climate-controlled building. Laughter. Good. Keep it warm. And through it all, I believed in one thing, that honesty, integrity, and critical thinking matter. They matter in history, they matter in teaching, and God help us, they really ought to matter in marriage. The shift in energy? Instant. You could feel the front row straighten. Megan's smile faltered just a bit. Daniel stopped chewing his mint. So tonight, I want to leave you all with a short presentation. A legacy piece, if you will. Not about me, but about what happens when you stop paying attention to the lessons around you. I clicked the remote. And the screen behind me lit up. First, just a black slide with white text. Grading more than just papers, a faculty affair. A ripple of murmurs. Then came the audio. Daniel's voice. Clear as day. You bringing that dress again, or am I the only one coming? Laughter, nervous now. Chairs squeaking. Someone gasped. The next slide? A still frame from the auditorium camera. Daniel and Megan, backstage, a little too close for coworkers. I kept clicking. Text messages. Calendar screenshots. One particularly grainy photo that still managed to show enough. The silence? Beautiful. Awkward. Sharp. Megan stood frozen, hands still resting on the back of a nearby chair. Daniel looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. I ended the presentation with a blank slide. Just the words. History repeats itself if you're dumb enough not to learn. Then I turned back to the mic. So, no. I'm not retiring. That was Megan's narrative. I've accepted a position at Briar Ridge Academy. Better pay. Better ethics. And I'll be taking 5 of our top students with me, students who deserve a school where the administration isn't busy playing dress rehearsal with each other's spouses. I set the remote down. Enjoy the cake. And walked off stage. No music. No applause. Just the sound of Daniel Cross muttering "what the hell," and Megan scrambling after me in heels that suddenly seemed way too loud for a teacher's budget. I didn't stop. Didn't look back. Because the last lesson I taught at Marston High? Wasn't in the classroom. You ever walk out of a place and know, you'll never see it the same again? That was me, stepping out of the Marston High auditorium under the flickering glow of its parking lot security lights, clutching a manila folder under my arm and a stale mint in my cheek like some washed-up detective from a black and white crime flick. Only this time, the crime scene was my life. The suspects were faculty. And the motive was garden variety lust dressed up in school lanyards and Apple watches. I didn't go straight home. Too obvious. Too soon. And honestly, I didn't want to risk Megan showing up pretending to cry, or Daniel trying to reason with me while still pronouncing entrepreneurship like it had 7 syllables. I drove instead. Just looped the neighborhood with the windows down. Let the air cool me off and the silence sink in. Marston was quiet that time of night. Which made sense. Everyone was either nursing their post-party awkwardness or speed-calling their friends to say, "You will not believe what just happened at Tom Becket's retirement thing." Good. Let it spread. By the time I made it home, the porch light was on. Megan's car wasn't in the driveway, bless. That meant either she had the decency to stay away or was mid-rehearsal for a new role, the victim. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and was immediately hit by the scent of vanilla candles. Probably still lit from whatever pre-party ambience she thought would soften the blow of infidelity. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. One had lipstick. The other? A faint smudge of arrogance, if I had to guess. I took off my coat, hung it on the rack like a man who still owned the place, because I did, and sat down at the kitchen table. Then, for the first time all week, I smiled. See, the party wasn't my endgame. That was just opening night. The real revenge? That was scheduled for Monday. Over the weekend, Megan tried. Oh boy, did she try. First came the texts. Tom, can we please talk? I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. It didn't mean anything. It was complicated. Then, by Saturday evening, she started going through stages. Denial. You blew this way out of proportion. It was just a joke. Anger. How dare you humiliate me in front of the entire district? You think you're some kind of hero? Bargaining. Maybe we could have a civilized conversation. Just you and me. We owe each other that. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't even open most of them. Muted her number, tossed the phone across the couch, and went back to doing something truly revolutionary for a man recently betrayed, absolutely nothing. On Sunday morning, I went to brunch with my lawyer. His name's Cliff. Wears sweater vests, always smells like cinnamon gum, and plays squash even though I'm convinced it's a fake sport. I like Cliff. He doesn't mince words. You sure you want to go nuclear? He asked between bites of quiche. I stirred my coffee. Cliff, we passed nuclear. This is post-apocalyptic. I'm just deciding which ruins I'd like to dance on first. He raised his glass. To dancing, then. Now, Monday. Here's where things started to get fun. While the staff at Marston were still whispering about the Becket mic drop of 25, I was pulling into the circular driveway of Briar Ridge Academy, a glossy private school with ivy on the bricks and secrets in the walls. The headmaster, William Holcomb, greeted me on the front steps with a handshake so firm I briefly lost feeling in my elbow. Welcome aboard, Mr. Becket, he said with a smirk that suggested he already knew everything. You certainly made an entrance. Briar Ridge was not Marston. No outdated AV carts, no copy machines that jammed more than they printed, no staff lounges that smelled like despair and lentils. This place had espresso bars, climate control, and a zero-tolerance policy for extramarital drama. I've sent your welcome email, Holcomb added as we walked the halls. Students are excited. And frankly, so are a few of our board members. What you did Friday? That kind of clarity is rare in education. Clarity. I liked that word. Better than scandal, which is what Megan kept calling it in her increasingly desperate voicemails. But the best part of Monday wasn't the welcome tour. It was the meeting I had scheduled at noon. See, Marston might have been my workplace for 28 years, but it wasn't just about the paycheck. It was about the students. And 5 of them, my strongest AP kids, had applied to Briar Ridge on my quiet recommendation. Early admission. Full ride. Courtesy of a scholarship program I helped Holcomb design behind the scenes. I called it the Legacy Grant. Daniel had no idea. Megan? She never bothered to ask about my meetings after school. So at noon, those 5 students, Shelby, Omar, Jordan, Layla, and Marcus, walked into the Briar Ridge Welcome Center and saw me sitting there with 5 folders and 5 acceptance letters. I wish I could bottle the looks on their faces. Shelby blinked twice. Mr. Becket? What are you doing here? I handed her the envelope. Same thing you are. Starting over. They all opened their letters in stunned silence, reading the same paragraph. You've been selected for the Legacy Grant at Briar Ridge Academy, a full academic scholarship awarded to students who demonstrate not just potential, but character. The smile I got from Omar? Worth more than any retirement gift Marston could have stuffed into a paper bag. And here's the twist, The Marston admin didn't find out until the parents called asking for transcript transfers. Cue the emails. The phone calls. The hastily arranged meetings trying to review policy and understand the implications. Daniel sent a group email that accidentally CC'd the whole staff. It read, "If Becket thinks he can poach students like he's building a fantasy football team, he's got another thing coming." I read it while sipping espresso in the Briar Ridge courtyard, wearing a nicer tie than usual. Didn't respond. Just forwarded it to Holcomb, who replied with, "He really does talk like that." Yes. Yes, he does. Later that night, Megan showed up at my house. Unannounced. Of course. She looked rough. Not physically, no, she'd never let mascara run in public, but emotionally. Eyes puffy. Posture hunched. The posture of a woman who'd finally realized her third act twist involved falling down the stairs she built. I didn't open the door. Just spoke through the side window. "Tom, please," she said. "Can we talk like adults?" "I don't know," I replied. "You've been rehearsing with children." "Jesus," she snapped, then caught herself. "I made a mistake." "No," I said, "you made a choice." Over and over. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did. And now it's going further. I smiled. "Hope you've got tenure." I watched her jaw tighten. Then her eyes flicked to the driveway, to my car, to the new bumper sticker that said Briar Ridge Alumni Faculty. "Is that where you went?" I shrugged. "Where I'm going. And where 5 of your best students now attend." The silence between us stretched like an empty stage. Megan, the drama teacher, with nothing left to say. She walked away eventually. Back to whatever place she's calling home now. Probably not Daniel's. Rumor has it his wife kicked him out the same night I played DJ with their private conversations. I watched her leave and didn't feel rage, or sadness, or even satisfaction. Just peace. And maybe a little anticipation. Because the curtain hadn't dropped yet. No. You'd think that after detonating your own retirement party and torching your marriage in the most polite, PowerPoint-driven way imaginable, things would quiet down. They didn't. By Tuesday, Marston High was on fire. Not literal fire, though if someone had rigged the breakroom Keurig to explode, I wouldn't have been shocked. No, this was a wildfire of finger-pointing, emergency staff meetings, and department-wide tension you could chew through like cafeteria mystery meat. Turns out when you expose the assistant principal and his extra-credit drama queen in front of half the district, people start choosing sides. And the best part? I wasn't even there to see it. But I knew it all anyway because the gossip didn't stop at the gates. My old email was still active. Apparently someone forgot to remove my access during all the chaos. Poor IT intern probably too busy Googling what to do when 2 faculty members are exposed as adulterers on a projection screen. I'd been BCC'd on 4 separate threads by Tuesday afternoon. Staff members who totally supported me, knew something was off, or were shocked by Megan's behavior. Right. Meanwhile, Daniel Cross, the smuggest man in a blazer 2 sizes too tight, was doing damage control. Badly. I had it all on good authority from Karen Haynes, the school secretary and, unofficially, Marston's human wiretap. She called me Tuesday night. "No hello. Tom. You would not believe this week. Try me." I was pouring a scotch. Cross called a mandatory admin huddle this morning. Said he wants to implement a personal conduct clause in staff contracts. Can you imagine? I actually laughed. What, like a loyalty pledge? Should we all start pledging allegiance to the marriage bed? And Megan? Karen snorted. She's been crying in the costume closet. Told the girls in the English department you blackmailed her. Did I? I sipped. I must have blackmailed her with her own voice, then. Whole school split, Tom. They're calling it the curtain call incident. Students made a TikTok edit. Of course they did. And Daniel, bless him, had no idea how to survive a PR storm where the facts weren't in dispute. He tried the "it was a joke" approach. Then we were on a break. Then, my personal favorite, I think Tom's suffering from post-retirement confusion. That one circulated in a staff-wide memo. I read it while sitting in the Briar Ridge faculty lounge, eating a bagel that didn't taste like sawdust and answering 0 emails from crying guidance counselors. Now, here's where things start to get surgical. See, I didn't just leave Marston. I planned my exit like a heist. Everything I needed, leverage, timing, audience, had been carefully curated over months. And part of that involved documentation. Receipts. Conversations. Little nuggets I kept stored on a secure drive just in case my trust your gut feeling about Megan ever turned out to be something uglier. And boy, did it. In early spring, I'd noticed Megan had a habit of forwarding emails from her school account to a personal Gmail. Not weird on its own. But some of those emails were marked confidential. Budget approvals. Field trip receipts. One email thread from Daniel asking her to update the cast list before the board sees it. Oddly paranoid. So I made copies. Nothing illegal. Nothing stolen. Just documentation of how 2 faculty members used their positions to manipulate student activities for their own convenience or, in Daniel's case, to clear the auditorium for their little trysts under the guise of drama rehearsals. I compiled it all into a neat PDF. Titled it "Conduct Concerns" for review. And I sent it anonymously, of course, to the Marston School Board. Each member. Individually. At 7:59 a.m. on Thursday. By 9:30, Daniel's calendar had been wiped clean. By noon, the principal was holding a closed-door meeting with HR. And by the end of the day? Daniel Cross was on leave pending investigation. Megan didn't come to work Friday. She didn't show up Monday either. Word around the faculty was she'd gone to stay with family. Which is code for holed up somewhere trying to figure out how the hell it all fell apart. Meanwhile, I kept teaching. Briar Ridge was a dream. Small classes. Students who didn't groan when I mentioned reading primary sources. No buzzing fluorescent lights, no copy paper rationing, no hallway fistfights over cafeteria tater tots. Just the work. Just the teaching. And the satisfaction of knowing I'd burned a bridge that deserved to go. But there was one last thing I had to do. I waited 2 weeks. Let the dust settle. Let Daniel sit in HR limbo and Megan stew in whatever Chardonnay-soaked version of denial she was curled up in. Then I called the local press. Small-town newspapers love a scandal. Especially one involving education, money, and just enough sex to raise eyebrows but not violate their family-friendly policy. The reporter, a guy named Eli with a voice like a used bookstore, took the bait immediately. "You're telling me the assistant principal misused school resources to pursue an affair with a subordinate, and you have documentation? Would I be calling you if I didn't?" We met the next day. I brought the USB drive. He brought a tape recorder and that slightly twitchy look of a man who knows he's sitting on a front-page story. "You okay with your name being used?" he asked. I thought about it. "No." He looked surprised. "No? I want the story out there. But let the facts do the talking. This isn't about my ego. It's about exposing the truth." He nodded. Anonymous source. Got it. The article ran under the headline, "Misconduct and Misuse, Internal Investigation Rocks Prestigious Marston High." It cited faculty sources, quoted excerpts from emails, and included one brutal paragraph that described how a retiring teacher's farewell speech revealed a months-long affair between school administrators, prompting disciplinary action and widespread staff re-evaluation. Widespread re-evaluation was putting it lightly. Daniel's HR case went from pending to terminated. Megan? She didn't wait around to be reassigned. She sent in her resignation by email. No goodbye message. No parting words. It was forwarded to me by, you guessed it, Karen Haynes. With a subject line that read, "She's gone. I clicked the attachment. Just 5 words. Please consider this my resignation. No punctuation. No explanation. I stared at the screen. Thought about all the years. The mornings. The petty arguments about thermostat settings. The shared lesson plans. The weekends that felt like theater rehearsals. Gone. With a .docs file and a whimper. Good. Now, I know what you're thinking. That has to be it. That's the final bow. The speech, the expose, the job poaching, the public fallout, the press. And you'd be right if this were any other story. But this? This is a revenge tale. And in a real revenge tale, there's always one person left who hasn't paid yet. The person who helped them get away with it. Because it turns out, Daniel Cross had an ally. Someone who helped him shuffle auditorium access, fast-track budget approvals, and reroute performance schedules without oversight. You guessed it. The principal. Turns out, loyalty isn't just a character trait. It's a liability. And I still had one card left to play. The thing about toppling a house of cards is, once the structure starts swaying, you realize how many fingerprints are on the base. Most people at Marston High assumed my grudge ended with Daniel Cross and Megan. I mean, those two practically handed me the revenge platter themselves, steaming, stupid, and soaked in cologne that smelled like insecurity. But I'm not most people. I teach history. Or taught. Same thing. And one lesson history makes painfully clear is this: affairs don't flourish in isolation. They survive on cover-ups, silence, and the kind of leadership that knows how to look the other way while cashing their retirement package. Which brings us to Principal Evelyn Kerr. Evelyn had a reputation: sharp, organized, composed. She wore tailored suits like she was auditioning for a Senate run and always spoke in slow, clipped syllables, like she was reading you your Miranda rights at a board meeting. But beneath that careful exterior was a woman who knew how to play favorites. She liked people who made her look good. People who didn't rock the boat. Daniel Cross? He was her golden boy. You know the type, enthusiastic in faculty meetings, always volunteering for committees he never really did any work on, wrote teamwork, in all caps on emails like it was a TED Talk. That guy. And Evelyn bought it. Hook, line, smirk. When I sent the board my evidence on Daniel and Megan, I included some interesting side notes. For example, the date of the auditorium maintenance Megan requested, which, coincidentally, happened to clear out rehearsal space for 3 days in a row, even though there was no work order. Or the time Daniel signed off on reimbursing Megan for costume purchases that included designer heels and a silk robe. I mean, unless we were putting on a Vegas lounge act, I fail to see how that aligned with Shakespeare. Guess who approved the expenses? Yep. Evelyn. Now, anyone could have made the mistake once. But this wasn't once. It was a pattern. A paper trail. And the district didn't like patterns unless they were test scores going up. I let the board chew on that for a week. Gave them time to do their own digging. Then I sent them a second package. This time with video. See, back in April, I'd attended a staff appreciation luncheon, one of those fake sure events where they give you a soggy sandwich and a pin that says Inspire, while reminding you not to use too many paper towels in the restroom. Classic Marston. But during that luncheon, Evelyn had given a little toast. A harmless, wineglass clinking toast. Except I'd recorded it mostly because I knew I'd want to remember the moment she called the teachers the true backbone of this community while spending the entire lunch seated with the admin team, literally back to the teachers. In that recording, her voice is clear. Confident. And most importantly, she talks about streamlining internal approvals and how empowering leaders like Daniel allowed the school to cut through red tape. Oh, Evelyn. You gave me your own confession in monologue form. I included that audio in my second package. Labeled it simply, Streamlined Corruption. This time, the board didn't wait for the weekend. By Wednesday morning, Evelyn was placed on administrative leave. Official word was that she was cooperating with an internal compliance review. Unofficial word? Karen Haynes, bless her gossipy little soul, told me Evelyn stormed out of her office with her desk plant and a stack of folders labeled future planning. I guess those plans changed. But I wasn't done. Because this wasn't about humiliation anymore. This was about a cleanup. A purge. So I made one more move. Briar Ridge had this annual event, Educator Exchange Week. Basically, faculty from other schools could sit in on classes, share techniques, and do light networking. Kind of a mutual admiration society with lesson plans and lattes. I offered to host a session. Realigning legacy teaching in a changing educational landscape. Sounds fancy, right? What it really was, a takedown. I crafted the whole 90-minute workshop around what happens when teachers become complicit in toxic cultures. I shared real-world examples, names redacted for legal reasons, obviously, documented the consequences of poor oversight, and concluded with a little slide that said, "It takes one lie to justify cheating. It takes a dozen people looking away to sustain it." Then I handed out packets, templates for whistleblower protections, ethical review processes, and anonymous reporting workflows. The room? Dead silent. A few uncomfortable chuckles. One teacher from Fairview High asked, "Are you always this direct?" I smiled. "Only when I'm awake." Afterward, a handful of younger teachers came up to thank me. Said it was the first time someone had shown them how to actually protect themselves in schools where leadership meant damage control. One guy, mid-30s, told me, "We had a principal like that. Turned out he was stealing grant money." I nodded. They don't start with stealing money. They start by stealing time. And then trust. By the end of the month, Marston High had lost. One assistant principal, Cross, fired. One drama teacher, Megan, resigned. One principal, Evelyn, officially retired to pursue new opportunities after a quiet settlement. And, as of last count, 7 other faculty members either transferred out or put in for sabbaticals. Meanwhile, Briar Ridge got 5 new top-tier students. 1 brutally honest teacher. And a growing waitlist for my classes. But there was still one voicemail I hadn't listened to. Megan. She'd left it the night before Evelyn went on leave. I saw the notification and didn't open it. I figured it was more of the same, "We need closure, let's be civil, you weren't innocent either, blah blah." But something made me play it. I don't know why. Maybe for closure. Maybe because I wanted to hear what rock bottom sounded like. Her voice was calm. Measured. A little too careful, like she'd rehearsed it. "Tom. I know you don't want to hear from me. And you probably won't return this. I wouldn't, if I were you. But I just wanted to say. I didn't expect things to end like this. I thought maybe, eventually, you'd understand. That things were complicated. And that Daniel." She stopped. I could hear her breathing. "He left. Moved to Colorado. Says he wants to reset his life. He's not returning my calls. Evelyn won't speak to me either. And I'm alone, Tom. I'm alone, and I don't know how it got this far." She paused again. Then, "Anyway, I hope you're okay. You deserve to be okay." Click. I deleted the voicemail. I was okay. More than okay. I'd walked through the fire. And all that burned behind me? Deserved every spark. But this isn't the end of the story. Not yet. Because one last scene was still scheduled. A final curtain call. One Megan didn't see coming. Her name may have disappeared from the Marston staff directory, but not from the school newsletter archives. Not from the yearbooks. Not from the town's little charity theater foundation where she still volunteered. I had one more message to deliver. Not for her. For the next fool who thinks betrayal doesn't have consequences. There's a funny thing about small towns with big egos: they forget fast, but they forgive slow. Especially when the people they're forgiving used to sit on fundraising committees, chair art auctions, and host wine-soaked parent mixer nights with finger sandwiches and passive-aggressive PTA smiles. Megan was one of those people. Even after she resigned from Marston, even after the article in the Gazette, she clung to the one thing that still gave her oxygen: community theater. Every third Thursday of the month, she ran a local arts foundation meeting at the Holloway Center, a quaint little theater with creaky floors, velvet curtains, and the kind of lighting that made everyone look 5 years younger and just guilty enough. It was her refuge. Her stage. Her arena where no one asked questions about Daniel Cross or principal cover-ups or what really went down at Marston. They just saw Megan, dramatic, creative, refined Megan, pouring cheap rose and talking about art as healing. It was adorable. And pathetic. Mostly pathetic. But I let it ride for a while. Watched from a distance. Monitored the newsletters, the social media posts, the board minutes she still signed off on. Then came the perfect opportunity. Every May, the Holloway Center hosted a charity gala, big night, big donors, silent auction, student performances, and a new inductee into the Creative Citizen Circle. Basically, a glorified plaque and a 10-minute speech about how the arts saved my life. This year's inductee? You guessed it. Megan Becket. Now, this was a prestige move. The kind of thing they give to beloved teachers, retired opera singers, or people who cry a lot during musical finales. Megan fit the bill. She was scheduled to give a speech. Had her picture in the program. The whole thing. And me? I bought a table. 8 seats, premium wine, close to the stage. My name was listed in the sponsor packet as Tia Becket, which, in a room like that, could mean anything. Theology professor, boutique interior designer, maybe even a British expat. Nobody asked. Nobody cared. The theater world is a swirling vortex of polite disinterest unless you're carrying a grant check. Now, I wasn't planning to cause a scene. Not my style. Not anymore. No mic drops, no viral moments. I'd done that already. This time, the move was quieter. Permanent. The gala began as expected: clinking glasses, amateur string quartets, slow-motion mingling between people who all pretended to love each other's Etsy shops. Megan showed up in a deep burgundy dress, fitted, elegant, dramatic. Of course. She was on brand. Her hair had been darkened, curled perfectly. She still had that practiced half-smile she used when she wanted to appear humble but important. Like she might cry if you complimented her too directly. I watched her from across the room. She moved from cluster to cluster like a ghost who didn't know she was dead. 10 minutes before her speech, she ducked backstage. Probably to center herself. Probably to go over the draft she'd spent weeks rehearsing in the mirror. That's when I made my move. See, I wasn't alone at my table. I'd invited a few guests. Remember Cliff? My lawyer with the squash addiction and zero patience for small talk? He came. So did Karen Haynes, the school secretary who knew where every body was buried, alphabetized, and cross-referenced with timestamps. And I invited one more person, Melody Grant. Melody was the head of the Holloway Donor Advisory Board. Retired librarian. Sharp as a tack. Believed in moral stewardship of public spaces. She'd once had a board member removed for showing up to a meeting with red wine teeth. Melody and I met 3 weeks earlier under the guise of supporting student arts grants. I let her do most of the talking. Mentioned how proud I was of the students I'd brought to Briar Ridge. Casually brought up how Megan had been an influential figure in the Marston drama department. She'd smiled at that. Megan Becket? She's a treasure. Always so composed. I'd nodded. Then, after a pause, said, "Composed people usually are. It helps hide the chaos." That was all it took. A breadcrumb. Melody went sniffing. And by the time the gala rolled around, she wasn't smiling so much anymore. So when Megan took the stage, cue soft spotlight, cue polite applause, I already knew what was coming. She began with a joke. Something about being more comfortable behind the scenes than in front of the curtain. Standard stuff. The room chuckled politely. Then she shifted gears. I've always believed in the redemptive power of art, she said. In the ability of creativity to carry us through pain and loss, and the chaos of a world that doesn't always make sense. She was setting it up. The redemption arc. The yes, I've had a tough year hint. The gentle nod to controversy without ever saying what it was. There were moments, recently, she continued, when I didn't know who I was anymore. When I felt the weight of judgment and misunderstanding. Subtle. Just enough for the crowd to lean in. But through the support of this community, and this beautiful theater, I found my way back to myself. Applause. The kind people give when they don't know what you just said but it sounded important. She smiled. Held the mic like it was a life raft. And then Melody stood up. Not abruptly. Not rudely. Just calmly. And walked toward the side of the stage. Megan paused. Is everything? Melody stepped up. Took the spare mic. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but I believe this is important. You could have heard a pin drop. Megan looked at her. Eyes wide. Still smiling, but with a hint of panic. She didn't know what was coming, but she felt it. We at the Holloway Center believe in accountability, Melody said. We believe in the integrity of those we honor. She turned to Megan. And while we celebrate art's redemptive power, we do not believe that it excuses conduct that undermines the very institutions we serve. Gasps. Shifts in seats. Someone dropped a fork. Melody handed her a printed statement. Effective immediately, the board has decided to revoke this year's Creative Citizen recognition. Megan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Melody turned to the crowd. Thank you. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. And walked off. No applause. No music. Just the sound of Megan standing there, frozen, under a spotlight that suddenly felt a little too bright. She stepped back from the mic, looked out over the crowd. And saw me. Seated. Calm. Watching. We locked eyes for 3 seconds. She blinked first. I left before dessert. Didn't need to stay for the aftermath. I'd seen enough endings to know what this one looked like. The fallout was quiet. Just like I wanted. A few social media posts vanished. The theater newsletter updated their PDF with a quiet footnote, 2025 inductee, rescinded by board decision. She never addressed it publicly. Not even once. That was the most beautiful part. Because now? Everyone filled in their own version. Was it money? Infidelity? A scandal? The unknown became the punishment. A blank page with her name at the top. And for someone like Megan, someone who lived for perception, that was the real ending. Not a speech. Not a breakdown. Just silence. So what's left? I still teach. Still drive the same car. Still sip my coffee too slow on Fridays and grade essays with a red pen that smells like justice. Every once in a while, I'll hear her name at the grocery store, in passing, maybe on some dusty program from last year's student musical. She used to be something, someone will say. And I'll smile. Because she still is. She's a warning. But don't worry. There's still one part left. Closure is a lie. People say they want it, the neat little bow, the heartfelt letter, the slow piano fade out where everyone forgives each other and learns something. But real life doesn't work like that. There are no violins. No credits. Just consequences. And in my case? A final truth no one saw coming. But before we get there, let me rewind just a bit. It's been 3 months since the gala. Megan hasn't shown her face at Holloway, hasn't updated her old faculty website, and, according to Karen, who still feeds me Marston gossip like it's a full-time job, hasn't replied to any district outreach. There's a rumor she moved in with her sister in Pennsylvania. Another that she's finding herself in Arizona. Someone even claimed she was on a writer's retreat. Which is funny, because Megan's idea of literature involved wine labels and inspirational fridge magnets. Daniel Cross, last I heard, took a job as a consultant for an edtech startup. Translation: unemployed with a LinkedIn profile that uses the word visionary 4 times. Principal Evelyn? Quietly hired at a charter school across the county line. She's keeping her head down, likely hoping no one googles too deep. And me? I'm good. Better than good. Briar Ridge made me department chair. I've got 5 students prepping for Ivy League admissions, 2 planning gap years to write full-length research theses, and 1 who straight up told me, "You're the only adult here who doesn't lie." That one hit harder than I expected. But there's still one piece left. Something Megan never saw coming. Something no one did. And it all started with a brown envelope. It arrived on a Wednesday. No return address. Just my name, typed, centered, plain. Inside? Photos. 8 of them. Candid shots. Megan. Daniel. Together. Not at school, not at home, but in a parking lot behind a building I didn't recognize. Holding hands. Kissing. One shot of her wiping lipstick off his collar. Each photo timestamped. Each taken 2 months before I found out. Long before I overheard the mic check. Long before Megan ever told me to relax. There was a note paper clipped to the back. Thought you should have known sooner. M. No other info. No handwriting I could trace. Just that letter. At first, I thought it was a prank. Some leftover spite from the Marston meltdown. A weird fan letter from someone who watched the fallout from a distance and wanted a front row seat to the encore. But then I looked closer at the building in the background. A law office. My lawyer's office. Cliff. I called him. "Please tell me you didn't set up a sting operation on your own property," I said. He laughed. "Of course not. What do I look like, the NSA?" I believed him. Cliff doesn't lie, he's too lazy for it. But then who? I stared at those photos for an hour. Paced. Thought. Racked my brain. Then I realized it. The angle. The height. The glare. These weren't taken by accident. They were taken by someone inside the building. Through a window. Cliff's secretary, a woman named Marina. Marina was quiet. Polite. But sharp. Real sharp. The type who reads people like spreadsheets. I always got the feeling she knew more than she let on. So I drove to the office. Walked in. Asked to see her. She met me in the lobby, casual as ever. "Tom," she said, smiling. "Did you get my package?" So that was it. "You took those?" She nodded. "I wasn't sure what you knew yet. But, you always seemed like the kind of guy who deserved the full picture." "Why?" She tilted her head. "You came in here every week for months. Sat in that chair. Calm. Focused. Planning. Never once raised your voice. Never played victim. That stuck with me. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent the last 6 months engineering a public collapse of 2 lives, and now this stranger was telling me she respected the craft. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Revenge is satisfying. But truth? That's permanent." I kept the photos. Locked them in my desk. Never showed them to anyone. Not Megan. Not the board. Not the press. Why? Because they weren't about proof anymore. They were about peace. See, people think revenge is a moment, a single explosion, a dramatic reveal, a perfect final act. But the truth is, it's a process. And for me, The process didn't end with Megan's resignation, or Daniel's firing, or Evelyn's exile. It ended with the quiet knowledge that even if I'd done nothing, even if I'd let it all slide, Megan still would have lost. Daniel still would have left. The truth still would have found a way out. I was just the narrator. The teacher. And this? This was my last lesson. 3 weeks later, I got invited to a student's graduation party. Marcus, one of the 5 I brought to Briar Ridge. His parents handed me a wrapped box. Inside was a pen. Engraved. To Mr. Becket for writing the truth. I don't cry. Not publicly. Not privately. But I felt something crack open in that moment. Because that's what this story was. Not a revenge tale. A truth tale. A reminder that behind every scandal, every affair, every smug smile in a staff lounge, someone's watching. Someone sees. Someone remembers. And if they're patient enough, they'll write it all down. So now, I grade papers. Sip coffee. Drive the long way home sometimes, past Marston. The building still stands. Still gets good test scores. Still pretends nothing happened. But I know. And so do they. Especially Megan. Especially when she walks past the framed gala photo in her sister's guest room and sees the empty space where her plaque should have been. Especially when someone brings up Marston and she has to smile through clenched teeth. Especially when her name appears in a Google search next to the words inductee revoked. That's the part that lasts. Not the anger. Not the spectacle. The silence. The missing pieces. The absence. You want to know the real twist? I never needed revenge. I just needed them to watch themselves collapse. And they did. In front of a crowd. On their own stage. With perfect lighting. And all I had to do was roll the credits.
Subscribe to the channel